My grandmother died in March of 2020. Her house has been empty ever since. The power's off, the water shut off at the street, and the push mower in her shed hasn't run since 2016. Somebody is still cutting her grass. For about 6 weeks, I thought that was a nice thing. I genuinely did. I spent a while trying to work out who it was so I could thank them properly. That's the part I keep going back over. The house is on Cranmer Road, 4 miles west of town. A little over 2 acres, a gravel turnaround, a detached shed. She lived there 51 years. She was 88 when she died, and she died the first week of everything shutting down. So there were 9 people at the graveside, and no lunch afterward. I don't think our family ever really got past how rushed it felt. It's been for sale since that August. It's still for sale. There's some survey problem with the fence line, and there's my Uncle Ray, who has never once in his life signed something the same week it was handed to him. Every few months, somebody says we ought to get it dealt with, and then somebody says, well, let's look at it next week. I'm the one with the key, because I'm the one who lives 20 minutes away. So a couple times a month, I'd drive out, walk the rooms, check the basement for water, and leave. That's all it was. It was a chore. The first Saturday I noticed was the 9th of April, 2022. I pulled into the turnaround and the whole front lawn was cut. Clean. Not tidied up, not weed whacked. Mowed. Properly. All the way from the porch down to the ditch. And my honest reaction was relief. I'd been meaning to get out there with a mower for 3 weeks and hadn't. And I stood there thinking, oh, thank God, the realtor finally did something. That's it. That was the whole reaction. No chill down my spine. Just a guy in a fleece jacket at 8:30 in the morning. Glad he didn't have to spend his Saturday on a mower. Next Saturday it was cut again. So I wrote a note. I actually did this. Thank you for taking care of the lawn. The family really appreciates it. I put it in an envelope with a $25 gas card and left it sticking out of the mailbox at the end of the drive, because I'd decided it was Dale Ferry across the road being neighborly. That envelope sat there for 3 weeks. I checked it every time I came out. Eventually the rain got into it, and I took it home and threw it away. I called the realtor on the 22nd. She said no, they'd dropped the lawn service back in the fall when the listing went cold, and did I want to talk about the price again? I said I'd get back to her. I asked Dale. He said he'd assumed we'd hired somebody. He also said, and I'm quoting him, "It looks good out there, better than when your grandma was doing it." He was being kind. He wasn't right, but he was being kind. I asked the Kesslers on the other side. Same answer, pointed the other direction. They figured Dale was doing it. So by the end of April, I had a mowed lawn and nobody who'd mowed it. And I want to be honest, this still did not frighten me. It irritated me. Somebody was on the property while it was listed, and that's a liability thing, and I could already hear Ray's voice about it. The 30th of April is when I finally stood there and looked at the lawn instead of the house. Every pass ran the same direction. Long, straight lines from the porch out toward the road, then back up alongside, then out again. Nobody who gets paid mows like that. A crew does the perimeter and spirals in because it's faster. My grandmother mowed porch to road, always. She said going in circles made her dizzy, which I don't think was true, but she said it. And the grass was long. Not shaggy. Cut, but cut high, maybe 4 inches. The way a lawn looks when somebody's got the deck up on the top setting. She cut high. She had a whole thing about it. You scalp it, it burns. I went and looked in the shed. Her mower's still in there. Green push mower, older than I am, and the engine is seized solid. You can't move the blade by hand. 2 years of cobwebs on it. No gas in the can. I stood in that shed a while. Then I closed the door and drove home and didn't think about it for a week, which is a skill I come by honestly. I need to tell you about 1994 now. There was a boy named Jamie who lived about a mile west of my grandmother, past the bend, in a house people in our family didn't talk about pleasantly. He was 13 that year. I was 8. He was one of those kids who was always at somebody's kitchen table. Not ours specifically, everybody's. He'd turn up at 4 in the afternoon and still be there at 7, and adults would feed him and be a little short with him, and then he'd go somewhere else. Even at 8, I understood that the reason he was always at other people's houses was that he didn't want to be at his own. Sunday, September 4th, 1994. Labor Day weekend. We had a cookout at my grandmother's and everybody was there. Jamie disappeared that night. He was reported missing Monday morning. The last sighting anybody ever confirmed was at the Sunoco in town at 7 in the evening, buying something with change. The search started east of there because that's where the Sunoco is, and because there's a creek behind the ball fields and everybody's mind goes to water. They looked east for 2 days. They looked other places after that. Nothing was ever found. Not a shoe, not a bike, nothing. Ever. Anywhere. In 28 years. And here's the sentence I've heard my entire life. From my mother, from Ray, from my Aunt Denise, in exactly this form. He was never at the house that night. I've said it myself. I said it to a girlfriend in college who asked about it. I said it to a coworker 2 years ago. I said it the way you'd give somebody directions. There are 4 things I remember from that night, and I've been told my whole life that all 4 of them are wrong. I remember getting sent to bed early in the middle of a show, when it wasn't all the way dark yet. I remember the adults' voices going down into that lower register through the floor. I remember my mother saying something specific in the kitchen, and I'm not going to repeat it because I got corrected on it so many times as a kid that I honestly don't know anymore whether it's a memory or something I built out of being corrected. And I remember the green thermos out on the porch rail the next morning. That last one seems like nothing. It's a thermos. But she only put it out there when she was going to be outside a while, and she was not an outside-at-night person. And I have a very clear picture of it standing on that rail in the morning, with the lid off. My mother's explanation, given patiently many times, is that I was 8, and that I've stacked 2 or 3 different weekends on top of each other, which children do. I believed her, not as a kid. As an adult in my 30s, I believed her about all of it. On May 7th, I drove out and the strip was cut. I have to explain the strip. At the far west corner, right where the lawn drops off into the ditch, there was a band of grass about 6 feet wide and 30 feet long that she never mowed. Ever. In my whole life. It was always a foot taller than everything around it, and by fall it went to seed and looked like a rough little hedge lying on the ground. As a kid, I thought she just couldn't be bothered. I asked her about it more than once, the way kids do, and she always had an answer. Ground's bad down there. Ditch stays wet, it'll bog the wheels. It's county land anyway. I'll get it next week. 28 years of next week. On May 7th, it was down to 4 inches, same as everything else, and the passes ran into it the same direction as the rest of the lawn. I sat down on the porch steps, not dramatically. I just needed to sit for a minute. The thermos was on the rail. I don't know what else to tell you about that. It was on the rail at the west end where she put it. Dented green thermos, screw-on cup for a lid, Kroger sticker on the bottom that's been there since the 90s. It had been in a box in the kitchen with the rest of her things, in a house I had locked myself. The box was still in the kitchen when I checked. It was still open. I put the thermos in my trunk. I didn't go up on that porch again for the rest of this. May 14th, the ditch was mowed. both banks in the bottom. Somebody had taken a mower down into a drainage ditch and cut it, which anybody who's tried will tell you is a miserable, stupid job. There were 4 survey stakes along that edge with orange ribbon on them from the fence line thing. 3 of them were still standing. The mowing had gone around them, the way you go around a stake you don't want to hit. May 21st, it was on the road. That's the one that got me. I came into the turnaround, and the far bank of the ditch was cut, and the shoulder of Cranmer Road was cut, and the cut kept going. West. A strip of mowed grass on the county shoulder, about 21 inches across, 1 mower's width, running away from the house in a straight line up the road. I stood out there in the middle of the road, looking at it for a long time.
Nobody was ever going to notice this but me. That's the thing. It's a county road with maybe 40 cars a day on it, and the shoulder gets bush-hogged twice a summer. Anybody driving past would see cut grass and figure the county did it. I walked it, about 40 paces, and then the grass got tall again. The end of it was clean, not ragged. It stopped like somebody had shut the mower off and turned around. The next Saturday it was 95 paces. The Saturday after that, 148. I started keeping it in the notes on my phone with the date because I'd caught myself misremembering the numbers between visits. I paced it the same way every time, heel to toe from the culvert, and I did it twice each trip to be sure. Somewhere in there I understood which way it was heading.
I've known that road my whole life. West on Cranmer, past the bend, is Jamie's house. I called my mother on the 6th of June. I didn't lead with the grass. I asked her about the night. I asked her straight out whether Jamie had come by the house that Sunday. And she said, he was never at the house that night. The same 8 words, the same rhythm. The exact sentence I'd heard for 28 years and said out loud myself. And it was the first time in my life I ever heard it as a sentence, as a thing with a shape, something that got made once and then kept. I backed off. Of course I backed off. I said I'd been out at the house and it got me thinking. And she said, that place isn't good for you, honey. And we talked about her knee.
And before we hung up, I apologized to her for bringing it up.
I want that in here because it's the most honest thing in this whole account. 36 years old, standing in my own kitchen, apologizing for asking a question. Denise called me 2 nights later, my aunt. She was 19 in 1994. She didn't say hello. She said, your mother told me you called her. I said, yeah. And she said, Mom wanted to go out with a flashlight. We told her to wait till morning. Then she said, that's all I'm going to say about it. And she hung up. She hasn't said one word about it since, and I haven't asked. Wait till morning. June 11th. 157 paces. 9 paces. After 40 and 55 and 53, it moved 9. June 18th, it was still 157.
It hadn't moved at all.
So I walked out to the end of it, middle of a Saturday morning in June, sun out, a truck going by behind me, somebody's dog barking a half-mile off. The path ends on the north shoulder of Cranmer Road, in the grass, at nothing. No sign there. No culvert, no driveway, no tree, no gap in the fence. Nothing on the far side but a soybean field. It's the most ordinary 40 feet of road in the county, and the mowed strip runs right up to it and stops in a clean line. I stood there, trying to work out why it would be that spot, and I turned around to look back at the house. The house wasn't there. The land rises a little between the culvert and that point. It's nothing. You wouldn't notice it driving, you wouldn't notice it walking.
I've been up and down that road 1,000 times in my life, and I'd never once noticed it. But from where I was standing, the roof line was gone. Not the trees, not the shed, the house.
Somewhere in the last 60 paces, that porch had gone out of sight. I walked it again, back toward the culvert, slower, watching for the exact spot where the roof came up over the rise. I marked it with my heel. It was right about where the numbers had started shrinking. 157 paces. At my pace, it took me a little over 2 minutes. A 13-year-old at night, walking away from a house he'd just been sent home from, moving fast because he was probably embarrassed. Call it a minute and a half. That's how long she could see him for. Not a crime, not a body, not a secret. 90 seconds of a boy walking west on Cranmer Road at about 20 minutes to 9 on a Sunday night, watched from a porch by a 62-year-old woman who then went inside and got told to wait till morning. And sometime that week, got told he was never at the house at all. The search went east. It went east on a gas station at 7 o'clock, and it stayed east for 2 days. I don't know if it would have mattered. I want to be clear about that because I've had a lot of time with this now. Nothing was ever found in any direction, and it's entirely possible that 90 seconds would have changed nothing at all. We just made sure nobody ever got to find out. I think about her standing over that strip of ground with a running mower every summer for 26 years, and a grandchild asking why she skipped it, and her saying the ground was bad or the ditch was wet or she'd get it next week. I was still standing at the end of the cut path when I heard the engine. Small motor, 4-stroke, somewhere behind me, back down the road on the other side of the rise where I couldn't see anything. Could have been Dale. Could have been the county. It was the middle of a Saturday morning in June, and half the township was cutting grass. I stood in the weeds and listened to it for probably 4 minutes without moving, and I could not tell whether it was coming closer or going away. Then it stopped, the way engines do. That was June 18th, 2022. Nothing's been cut since. The lawn out there is knee-high now. The shoulder's grown back in, and you can't see the line anymore unless you know exactly where to stand. The house sold in October. Ray signed. The buyers are a young couple who want to put a pole barn on the back 2 acres. I didn't tell them anything, and I'd like to say that's because there was nothing useful to tell them. I think that's mostly true. I've never said any of this to my mother. She's 71. Denise won't talk to me, and Ray, as far as I can tell, has genuinely convinced himself the sentence is true, which might be the worst part of it. Jamie would be 41 this year. His mother moved away in 1999, and I don't know where. I mow my own lawn. I want to say that because people assume I wouldn't. Little corner lot every other Saturday, and it doesn't bother me one bit. What happens is this. If I hear a mower somewhere I can't see it, behind a fence or 2 streets over, or out past a tree line, I stop. I stop whatever I'm doing, and I stand there, and I listen, until I can tell whether it's getting closer or farther away. I don't decide to do it. I just need to know which direction it's going.